All right, I'm going to do the section 530. The actual solving part, the main part of this is the skills I showed in part one will allow you to do this part two. So first thing we have to be able to do is we have to be able to solve. Now, we have to have the skill of factoring. This is the same question. This is for an algebra class. This is for a calculus class or a trig class, excuse me. So when I factor with two terms, I always pull what's in common. So I can pull out an x. Then after I pull out the x, I set it equal to 0. I set each factor equal to 0. That's one of the key steps to know. So we get x is 1/2. And as far as an algebra kid, they are done. They have solved the problem. Ours is a little different. So what do these guys have in common is cosine. So we factor out a cosine. And you set each of those equal to 0. So I got to set that equal to 0. I set that equal to 0. And then after I set equal to 0, I can isolate and solve for cosine. Well, where an algebra student's finished, they got x equals, they're done, we still have to find theta. So the mathematical real thing to do in this thing is you have to solve for theta. So what you're really doing is arc cosine. We talked about that with our calculator, that button. But a lot of people go, oh, I just punch in my calculator. Fine, that will get you the answer, but you should understand what's happening. You're technically, I'm gonna write this down. You don't have to show this step per se, but we're gonna take the arc cosine of both sides. Now, arc cosine is the opposite of cosine. It's the same as this. Since x is multiplied by 2, I have to divide by 2. Mathematically, I do the opposite. Well, this one I'm cosining. The opposite of cosining is arc cosine. So the arc cosine cancels, so then theta is arc cosine of 0. All right? So technically, if we didn't do all that work, and we looked at this, we're saying, hey, when is cosine 0? So here's our cosine graph. From 0 to 360, 0 to 2 pi, it hits 0 at pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. So whenever you're looking for a whole number like 0, 1, -1, the graph is the best way to look. So when's cosine 0? At pi over 2. Well, I said 0 to 360, didn't I? So we'll go 90 and 270. If they had asked me for radians, because right here they're asking from 0 to 360, they're asking me for degrees, I would have said pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. Okay? So 90 and 270. Now we still got to solve this one. When's cosine 1/2? Well, when's cosine hit 1/2? Well, I could look at the triangle. I could use my calculator, arc cosine, but really I'm doing is arc cosine of 1/2. Remember, there's many answers. So when's cosine hit 1/2? Well, we look around. If I want to use without a calculator, 60 degrees angles. It's positive 1/2. So 60 degrees is 1. Remember, cosine's positive in quadrant 4. 60 degrees down is 300. And there's your 4 solutions to this problem. And that's just from 0 to 360. Where it could get really nasty is if they said, give me all the answers. Then that's when you would have to do from video 1, 90 plus 360n, 270 plus 360n, 60 plus 360n, do them all. And you could do it, it's just a pain in the butt, but that would be listing every answer. So, like a calc, we'll always see 0 to 360. We won't ever be listing the infinite answers and stuff like that. That's Trig's job. But we will always go 0 to 360, which is good. Okay? All right, so there's one problem. Let me show you another. Sometimes ones that are factorable, like this one. Now this is different than the last one in that there's that 1. Or else I could pull out like I can't pull out a cosine. A lot of students do. They go, I'm going to send the 1 over. Oh, no. This is equivalent to factoring that. So if you have trouble factoring, replace the trig function with x, rewrite the equation, and try to factor as if you're an algebra student. Okay? This factors 1 and 1, and we want plus 1 here and minus 1 there. So that would factor that. So mine then would be 2 cosine minus 1 cosine plus 1. Alright. Now remember, we got to set each factor. Let me erase this now. We got to do when cosine is a half and when cosine is negative 1. Well, I just did cosine is a half. I shouldn't have had the same one, but wasn't thinking ahead. So remember, cosine was a half at the 60-degree angle. Cosine's positive in first and fourth quadrant. Okay. When's cosine hit negative 1? Well, negative 1 is the bottom of the graph. It only happens at pi or 180 degrees. So that one only had one solution because you can see the cosine graph only hits negative 1 one time in its period. Okay. All right, let me show you one more. So let's do a tangent squared. I think we'll do 3. I did a different one in their notes. Well, you got to take a square root of both sides. Now you could try to bring the 3 over and try to factor and stuff, but if you take the square root of both sides, and remember when you take square root, you get plus or minus. So I get plus or minus root 3. So this one is actually solving 2 problems. One is tangent radical 3. Excuse me. And one is tangent negative radical 3. So in both cases, I'm looking for one's tangent radical 3. Well, tangent of 60 is radical 3. So I know it's all 60-degree angles. So from this one, it's 60 and 240, which is, because tangent is positive 1 and 3, that's the 2 positive answers. This one's asking for the 2 negative. So 60 degrees in those two is 120 and 300. So they're all 60 away, they're all reference angle 60. And that's what happens when you take a square root of both sides. You'll get a plus or minus, which now is going to create a couple different equations to solve. All right. So I did them all in degrees. I wasn't even thinking about radians. If it said radians, you just convert these. So I'm going to just show you what the radian, if the directions switch to this. 60 is pi over 3. We got 4 pi over 3. We got 2 pi over 3. We got 5 pi over 3. And you would just list it that way instead. Nothing scary, just got to get used to doing that. All right. So that's solving trig functions, and make sure you look at both part 1 and part 2.